all the Jackson stuff.
Hmm.
Yeah, I can barely keep up.
What do you think about it?
It's wild, man. I didn't, I didn't think it would be this soon.
Hmm.
I really didn't. So I thought it was going to be open day or bust kind of thing.
Hmm.
So the fact that it's actually here and he's in the lineup and like it's real. Let's
Yeah.
go.
Have
To
they
me,
have they yet where he is he playing tonight?
Yeah,
yeah.
he's playing second batting ninth.
Ninth. I kind of like that. Him at the
Hmm.
bottom of the order.
Yeah, second leadoff.
I also think, and my friend asked me this. He was like, "Oh, so what do you think about Holiday to the majors?" And I'm like, to be honest, I can't tell you right now because if you saw with Adley, you saw with Gunner, they both started slow. So I'm like, give him some time. If he starts off fast, like, oh my god, but give him some time. Like, don't expect everything out of him, if that makes sense.
Right. No, that's yeah. People's expectations are unfortunately going to be just too. They expect him to come out and be a Hall of Famer tonight, and that's just
Mhm.
not going to happen. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
he definitely could start out on the slower side, and I think fans would be pretty upset with him about that, which is
yep,
crazy considering
I know.
he won't be 21 until December.
Hmm.
Um, it yeah, I mean, people probably, I mean, him being up this early, like people look at him as he should win the Rookie of the Year. I mean, I'm sure that a
Mhm.
lot of sites would have him as the favorite now, and a lot of O's fans would look at him as the favorite now.
Yep. Yeah, I didn't check the actual numbers, but I think I read somewhere this morning that the actual Vegas odds changed dramatically as of this morning.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
So with that, I guess let's get into it.
let's do it.
Hey Birdland, how are we today? Season 6 is underway, and these first few weeks are going to be great. I've got some guests lined up. Today, our guest is from the Baltimore Battery, which is a website that entails a bunch of Orioles-related articles. Really interesting. You should go check them out. My guest is one of the writers for the Battery, and in my opinion, is one of the most famous Orioles content creators on Twitter. From Montgomery County, please welcome my guest, Mr. Jason Benowitz.
Thanks for having me, guys. This is gonna be fun.
So usually I do trivia of the week. So this week's trivia of the week asks who allowed Cal Ripken Jr.'s 3,000th hit? A. Hector Carrasco, B. Tom Glavine, C. Greg Maddox, D. CNL Perez.
I was
Jason,
say,
do you know the answer?
yeah, I was gonna say this is almost unfair because Cal Ripken was my childhood, so it's yeah, it's Hector. It's definitely Hector. Yeah.
Of course, I'll announce it at the end. Before we get into content, I did have some questions I lined up. Um, how how'd you get started with the Battery?
Um, this story is gonna actually be a lot more boring than anyone probably wants. But I've been on Twitter and doing things for 10 years now, just doing my own thing. And last spring training, I got a message from our fearless leader, Jared, and he just said, "Hey, we want you on board. We want you to join. What do you think?" And without question, I said, "Yeah," because I've always kind of enjoyed writing, but never really thought of it in a baseball writing perspective. Um, and this just gave me a chance to do it, and I absolutely love it. And just to give those guys and gal a shout out, like they kill it day in and day out. Like they everything you see, I say this all the time. I feel like I'm just riding the coattails because they day in and day out they kill it, and they just let me write when I can. So if people haven't checked out what they do, every single day they're posting amazing stuff. You got to go check it out.
Second question. I'm actually intrigued by this because you're older than me. You're older than Caleb. So, what's your favorite O's memory?
Ooh, um, see, that's another hard one because I've gotten really lucky. I've been I've been in the building for a lot of very cool stuff.
Mhm.
Um, I was there for game 162 in 2011. with that whole craziness. I was at all the statue games, the Cal one. Um, it's funny, the one I was not at was the Delma Young double. I wasn't there for that. Um, but I think probably, because I try to think of it as ones I've been to. I mean, I got plenty of great ones. But as far as ones I've been to, I think my favorite might be so far 2012 ALDS Game 2. I was actually just standing out I was on Utah Street, on the porch with everyone, just going crazy. Um, it was just so much fun. Ending the game, striking out A-Rod doesn't get better than that.
Yeah.
And it was just a blast.
Let's see, what else do I have? Thoughts on the season so far? I mean, 6-4. Not what O's fans wanted. I mean, still above average though.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm sure you guys have seen it on Twitter. People are calling for all kinds of things, but it's 10 games. They'll be okay. We know that they're going to hit. They're going to continue to hit. Now bringing Jackson up, and I can almost guarantee you he's not the last one. So they're just going to continue to hit. They're going to continue to mash. Their starting pitching is going to be great, not just good, but great. The only question mark seems to be the bullpen, and I think they're actually not getting enough credit for what they've done so far. Again, I know there's some blown saves in there, some holds that didn't go super well. But you look at like what Danny Coulomb was doing, it's stupid. Cano's going to keep it. Kimbrel, I understand he's had some shaky years, but there's a reason he is who he is. Like he'll figure it out. He'll lock it down. But so far, again, I have complete trust in these guys. They know what they're doing. It's 10 games. It's cold. A lot of the places they're playing, they'll find it.
So next question, Caleb, you can answer this one too. I was watching the post game. After the game yesterday when Burns pitched, and Burns is speaking, and my dad asked me, he's like, "Do you think Burns is happy here?" And to be honest, from just the way he talked, I was like, I think he is, but I think he really misses Milwaukee. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I mean, I don't know. I don't think he's unhappy by any means. But I mean, definitely new team, new organization, and he's still on that kind of like prove it 1 year deal. So not really locked in anywhere. I mean, but at the same time, like big Yankees fan, I watched the way like Juan Soto talks about being in New York, and it's completely different. Juan Soto talks about how much he loves it there, the fans. Like you can tell with every sentence that he wants to be there this season and wants to be there long term. And it just kind of sounds like Corbin Burns is happy to be here, but not ecstatic the way that some other players have been about their new teams.
Jason, what do you think?
Yeah, I think part of that too, because that's actually a great comparison with Juan Soto. I think it's partially personality too. Like Burns, again, it's not like we're friends or anything, but everything I know about him is he just shows up and he wants to work. That's what he's there to do. So I don't think you're going to see that emotion from him. I don't think he's going to say it out loud because he's a Boris client, and we know how that goes. So I just think he shows up to work. He's doing it with a team that he loves, and I mean, it would be crazy to not think he doesn't miss Milwaukee at all because he's got friends there. He lived there for a number of years of his life. Like that's when you have to pick up and move like that. There's differences. But I think it's just one of those. He's here to throw the ball every 5 days, and if it turns out to be a long-term thing, great. And if not, he'll go do it somewhere else.
So I did also want to talk before we go into the holiday stuff. I did talk a lot about the Royals with Ryan Ripken. But the Royals so far, and I mean, we're not going to talk about the Royals for long, but they look amazing. I mean, right now they're on a 5-game win streak. Bobby Witt Jr. looks insane. I don't know. I'm loving the hype behind the team, and I think right now, they're like a little bit on the rise. Maybe 2021 Orioles, 2022 Orioles type of vibe. What do you guys think about that?
I've been super high on Bobby Witt. Justin, you know that. I think that like when we talked a couple weeks ago about our dark horse MVP picks, he was mine for the AL. I think he is going to win an MVP at some point in his career. I still think they're a little bit of ways. The pitching staff outside of Cole Ragans, and even Cole Ragans himself, is still unproven. They got a couple guys behind Witt, but nothing crazy. I mean, it's tough because 10 games in, it's really hard to take an outside look. I mean, the Pirates are 9-2 right now, and I don't think anybody would have expected them to start 9-2. So I still think it's super early, but for me, I think the Royals are going to be competitive, but I don't think that that this is their year. I think they still need to go out and make a couple more moves. I think they're a few years away.
Yeah, I think, I mean, they're fun. I got to see him in person. I was there for that crazy Wednesday game that lasted. Well, the game wasn't long, but the day was. And Reagan's pitched that day, so he's just bonkers. That dude's going to be a star for a long time. Barring one of these elbow injuries, he's going to be a star for a long time. And Bobby Witt, he's the truth. He's going to show up every day and he's going to ball. So I really like them. I think they're fun. I think if I was a Royals fan, I would be excited and optimistic, but I would also be realistic. 21 Orioles is kind of a great way to put it. Like, just, they got some guys in the minors. Their system's not loaded, but they have some guys to build upon. And again, they have some fun pieces, but the puzzle's definitely not complete by any stretch.
Something they do have, though, is that they have Salvador Perez, who, I mean, and like, we have veterans on the team, but that's like a veteran that's been on the team and has been amazing through the years. And I'm not saying Hayes hasn't been amazing, Santander hasn't been amazing, but if you look at Perez towards Hayes and look at the All-Star games and that type of stuff, they have that. And I think that factor will also help them.
Yeah, I mean, having a multiple time World Series champion, or maybe one time, actually, I might have that wrong, but having a guy that's won a World Series that's been to the playoffs multiple times. I mean, I think the O's need somebody like that. I don't know where that fits in. Maybe it fits in more in the bullpen with Kimbrel. I guess maybe that was the idea, but or even Burns. I mean, Burns has pitched in the playoffs too, but definitely, I think one of the biggest things that kind of hindered the Orioles last year towards the end of the year and in the playoffs was just, how many guys on that team had playoff experience outside of Aaron Hicks, who was only there half the year. So having a veteran guy that's done it for years and years is huge for an organization.
Yeah, and honestly, I think you hit it on the head. I think that's honestly part of why Kimbrel's here. I mean, I know he's here to get outs, but he's done it. There's right now, maybe Kenley Jansen is the other one, but Kimbrel's the only other real closer who's got that much good playoff experience, and that should help the guys in the pen moving forward.
So let's get into this Jackson Holiday stuff. Yesterday, the news came. I was actually watching One Piece. For all of you who would know what One Piece is. It's an anime. I was downstairs. My dad's like, "Did you hear the news?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "Jackson Holiday." I'm like, "You're joking, right? Like, what are you talking about?" So I come upstairs. He's like, "Yeah, like, check your Twitter feed, check your feed." I see all this stuff about Holiday. I'm like, "Oh my God." So I missed the exact time it came out. But I kind of find it funny. That's the way I found out the news.
Yeah, it was. I was just sitting at home, normal night. Just games were over. Obviously, the day game. So I was actually watching a lot of the minors. I was watching Aberdeen and mainly Aberdeen and Norfolk were the two that I was just watching, and sure enough, passing notification comes up, and everyone that was the end of the night. Everything was over at that point. Everyone was going crazy.
Also, I did see a post. Nothing against the Yankees. But I did see a post with the 10 wins. And I was like, first to 10 wins. Yankees fans were ecstatic. And I did kind of trip one of the Yankees fans. I was like, that's the only thing they're gonna get this year. I don't think that. I think the Yankees are gonna make the playoffs. I think they'll do pretty good in the playoffs. But I just find it crazy that the Yankees have these high expectations and can look forward to it because they've had these years of winning World Series, had these years of long playoff runs and that type of stuff. Where the O's from 2014, I guess, to like 2020, just haven't really been at the playoffs, anywhere near the playoffs, haven't even sniffed the playoffs. So when fans are just like, oh, like they're not hitting and they're disappointed, I can see where that's coming from. As they haven't even made the playoffs, and they made the playoffs that looked amazing last year. But again, it is only 10 games.
I think the biggest thing with that, Justin, is it's a different level of excitement. I mean, for Yankee fans, I mean, I'm excited every year because the expectation every year is to have a winning season and make the playoffs. Anything less than making the playoffs for pretty much my entire life has been a failure of a season. But there's not a lot of homegrown players that come through. It's a lot of guys who are signed, traded for, like they big name guys. So like that's my level of excitement is, you know, Juan Soto is an MVP caliber. Like that's why I'm excited. I think Jackson Holiday and the O's, I think their excitement is actually better than what Yankee fans feel, simply based off the fact that like as an O's fan, you have watched this team go from a team that, you know, a couple of years ago was, you know, back-to-back 100-loss seasons, and they have just built that farm system. They've brought players through, and now every single one of the guys playing it was an O's minor leaguer, has made it through. Like that level of excitement is uncomparable to, you know, just going out and signing and trading. Like obviously that's nice, but like Jackson Holiday, having Holiday, Rutschman, and Henderson back 3 straight years as the number 1 prospect, like I would be excited this year, excited next year, and for the next 5 years, because that's when those guys get off arbitration and stuff. So like they still have tons of team control. So excitement for the O's should be the highest it's been in a while.
Yeah, you know, I actually I tweeted this today. I just shot a little video, and it was one of those that like it's a weird feeling of, as Orioles fans, it almost feels like we're not supposed to feel this, or like the other shoes about to drop, because it's always been like, oh, they're good, but this, or they have the Adam Jones and the JJ Hardys and Nick Markakis and Chris Davis when he was good, but this, and now it's finally they're just good. There's no shoe to drop, right? It's everything's going right now, and it's just starting to. There's really the possibilities for what this team can do in the next 5 to 7 years, if not more, are genuinely limitless. I mean,
And
there's no end to it.
that even, I mean, the biggest part too is the salary cap. You know, they are bottom 10 in the league in payroll right now, and they don't have to pay Rutschman for 5 more years. They don't got to pay Gunnar for more years, Jackson Holiday, and then, you know, you have these guys on expiring contracts in a year or two. Like I know Mullins, Santander, and Hayes are all UFAs after this year or next. But you know, those guys can walk. You don't need to pay them big money because you got Heston sitting down in AAA. You got you know, Kauser, who hot start to the season, should be playing every day. You know, like they have guys that are just going to fill spots for years to come. And then if they can lock down Holiday, Gunnar, and Adley, I don't see why this couldn't be the best team in the MLB for the next 10 years.
Yeah, which is crazy because they've been the worst team for so long. Again, it's a shock to the nervous system of how am I supposed to feel about this.
Also, Jason, you probably know because you've probably seen the lineup. I really haven't checked the lineup. Is Westbrook playing third today?
I believe so. That last time I looked, I it was a quick glance because it came out right before we came on. But I mean, it's got everyone in it. It might be the best lineup I've seen since that 2014 playoff run. And this arguably in the long run could be a better lineup.
Yeah.
They have.
Continue,
Sorry to
Caleb.
cut you off. Listen, the lineup today: Gunner, Adley, Santander, O'Hearn, Mountcastle, Mullins, Cowser, Westberg, Holiday.
Yep.
That's crazy.
Yep.
That is top to bottom. Every single one of those guys is a talented baseball player. Like there are no holes, especially replacing Hayes. He struggled, but I mean, if I'm a pitcher, I look at that lineup and I don't see a weakness in it. I don't see a guy that I want to attack more than the other. And especially with the way that the O's platoon a lot of their players, you can't try to pitch around a lefty to get to the righty because they got a lefty sitting on the bench. So it's just Brent. You can't talk enough about the stuff that Brandon Hyde has done and the organization building these prospects, because this lineup is wicked.
They also do have switch hitters in Rutschman, Santander. I don't know if there's another one. If there is, I can't think of it on the top of my head. But that's also good for the team, in my opinion, because you can keep them in every game if it's a left-hand opening day or not opening day pitcher, but a starter or a right-hand starter. So I think that also helps the lineup a lot.
Yeah, there's no holes, and the thing is, if someone gets hurt or something happens, you have someone just as good, if not from a talent perspective, better, sitting down in AAA.
So also Tony Kemp getting DFA'd. I mean, I'm not mad about it. Credit to him for making that catch yesterday. It was a really solid catch, like left field, close to the first base. But he's DFA'd. Anything on that you have to talk about? I mean, again, I really don't think there's a big deal about that. I mean, I really think they got him as a veteran, but if he's gone, are they going to look to Kimbrel as just the veteran, or are you going to look at Hayes as a veteran? What are you going to do in that situation?
I mean, I think Tony Kemp was exactly what he was there for, and as long as he was going to do what he was going to do. He was a stopgap, and I saw who said this today. I think Adam Jones tweeted it. He said, he's one of 24,000 to ever do this. Like he's a major league player. He got some at bats. Again, whether I agree with whether he should have been there or not is a different story. But he was there. You can argue if he contributed or not, but now that his time is over, there's not much to say about it other than thanks for coming.
Mm-hmm.
He really, I mean, yeah, exactly. He did what his job was, and that was just to not get hurt and play every third day until Jackson was ready. And I really think that's the only reason that I think if Jackson makes the opening day lineup, Tony Kemp probably wouldn't be on the team. I like you said, Jason, do you think he contributed? That's up for interpretation. I think that he did exactly what he was told to do, and I think that was the player that was going to get moved from the beginning, barring a injury or a just ridiculously slow start from someone on the bench. He was the guy. The writing was on the wall for him. I think.
Continue, Jason.
No, I was just agreeing. That's exactly it.
I was gonna say with the Royal series, people are like, oh, we stole the series. Oh, like we should have won 2 out of 3. We could have got swept. To be honest with you, if you do look at some of the Astros series, I mean, not this year, but like in the past few years, or you look at some of the Braves series, sometimes they steal series too. And I think that's honestly what good teams do. They find ways to win games. It doesn't have to be pretty. I forgot who I was talking to this about, but I was talking about Dean Kramer, and I'm like, I think you brought this up. And he was like, yeah, like he's not perfect, but he gets the job done. So at the end of the day, I feel like if you get the job done, no matter what, it's just good for the team.
Yeah. Well, shout out to Dean, by the way. I've said this publicly. I think Dean is going to be a 200+ inning guy this year. I think he's just going to throw. He's not going to win the Cy Young, but he's just going to go out there. He's going to throw. He's going to eat innings. He's going to give the team a chance to win. Which again, on the team that's trying to go as far as they are, those are the guys you need your stars, but those guys are arguably more important.
And
Yeah,
then
and
with the Royals game, I wanted to talk about Reagans versus Burns. I know Burns didn't have the best stats. I want to say it was because of the rain, to be honest, because if you look at Milwaukee, that's an indoor park. It opens up, but it's mainly an indoor park. So he really had that with him in Milwaukee, and he didn't have that with him in Baltimore. Plus the delay, it doesn't really happen in Milwaukee. Again, because the closed dome. So I think that really affected him. I don't think because if you saw him against the Red Sox yesterday, what 7 innings, 6 innings, something like that. He had a great start again. I don't think you could look at it and you're like, oh, like it's a bad game. It's going to happen the rest of the season. I think that's another adjustment and a kink that the team has to work out. He has to work out.
Yeah, I'll tell you for a fact because again, I was one of the idiots sitting there. It was cold. It was. I think I tweeted a picture of him warming up, and I said I don't understand how anyone pitches a baseball in this weather. Like it just the fact that he did what he did, and Reagan's too. Honestly, Reagan's deserves credit. The fact that they both did what they did to get through their portion of the game was honestly superhuman.
and to do it in like the time frame as well. I
Yep.
mean, I mean, I've seen videos of when like Trevor Bauer had his YouTube series a while back. Like you really got to see like how strict pitchers are with their schedule.
Mm.
Everything is down to the minute, and I don't know what if the players were maybe told something different, but from a fan's perspective, the game was delayed at 12:30, and then no update was made until around 5, 6 o'clock.
Mhm.
So you got to think as a player, like the fact that both of them were able to go out there 5 hours after when they were supposed to, conditions were bad, and that throws everything off, and you have a pretty solid pitching outing from both of them for second starts of the year. It like Jason said, it's a credit to both of them because I it can throw off the entire day. I mean, there's a reason that a lot of times pitchers will not go back in after a rain delay. I mean, some of that is due to arm, but it's everyone has a system. 5 hours is a crazy long time to be delayed, and they both did their jobs, and it led to an Orioles win. So, at the
Yeah.
end of the day, it's a like you said, it not every game is a 10 run win. It's grinding out victories when you can, and I think that's been the biggest part is can the Orioles do that right now? They've battled back in some, but the games that they've lost, like all 4 of their games have been 3-run games. So, they're in every game and 2 of the games in Pittsburgh were walk-offs. So, we're sitting here the through 10, those are 6-4, but realistically could be 8-2, could be 9-1 if an Angels game goes differently. So they, like you said, good teams just find a way to win, and I think the O's are going to get back on track. I mean, they got a pretty nice schedule coming up. I will say that I cannot wait for a couple weeks to talk about the stretch that they have in June, because I think that they need to be in a
Yeah.
very good spot going into June because Justin, I don't know if you know, and Jason, you're shaking your head, so I feel like you have an idea that they play in the span of like 16 days. They played Houston, the Yankees, Philadelphia, and the Braves
Without an off day.
without an off day, all back to back.
Mhm.
And those, I mean, they're lucky the Dodgers aren't in there too, because those are 4 very, very talented teams. So that's going to be a fun stretch. But 10 games in, rain delays, that stuff's going to happen. But they're big leaguers at the end of the day, and they got the job done.
So
Yeah.
talking about the 16 game stretch, no breaks. I don't remember the exact number last year before like the postseason. Jason, you may know. If you know, feel free to chime in. But they had a long amount. I think it was like 2-3 days that they had off and like spent like 29 games or something. I don't know the exact number. But they did it last year, so I mean they can do it again.
Yeah.
So
No, like you said, they get paid to do this, a lot of money. So their job.
yeah, so the stretch they have is they play every day from Friday, May 31st, all the way through the 17th. They get the day off on the 17th, and then second half. But even the games before Atlanta, they're in Tampa Bay, or they're home against Tampa Bay, at Toronto, at Tampa Bay, then Atlanta, then Philly, then New York, then Houston.
Yep.
That's going to be some fun baseball. That June baseball, kids, everyone's going to be out of school and stuff. I cannot wait for summer games. It is going to be packed. Camden Yards is already electric. Opening day was so much fun. Like, I seriously cannot wait for June baseball, and to get further into the season, because 10 games, it's easy to look at some of the struggles, but there's also a lot of promising stuff, and there's a lot of guys who towards the end of spring training weren't playing as often, so definitely a lot of things to improve on too, which we'll get into a little bit later.
So about the Pirates series, I know we were talking about bad weather. The snow was insane. I thought that was insane. I want your two opinions on that. But Grayson pitched in the snow. Grayson still looked fine. What did you guys think about that?
Oh yeah, I think it's crazy. I don't know how they didn't call the game off for at least a couple minutes, because at least from the perspective of watching it on TV, it looked like it was coming down pretty hard. But I want to touch on Grayson for a second, because he has, in the 2 games he has started so far, he has stepped up in big time. And he looked really good against the Pirates. He had 2 mistakes for home runs, but other than that, like, he has been the number 2 that they have needed with Bradish out. Add in the fact that Dean Kramer has just looked. I don't even know what he did in the offseason, but he looks like a different pitcher. That those 3 holding it down until Bradish gets back. You slide Bradish in, like, that could easily be the best 1 through 4 in the MLB. That the pitching staff has really done their job the entire year. It really seems to be that the games that they lose, the offense is just not fully clicking.
Yeah, no, I actually love this starting pitching staff. And 1 to 5 when they're healthy, because the other person that not that you omitted them because Bradish is the dog, but you get a healthy John Means back, and this it's ridiculous. I think you get a healthy John Means as a 4 or 5, depending on where you want to put him, how many innings he can throw with his arm. I mean, if you go Burns, Bradish, Grayson, or however you want to put those, Kramer, Means, I think they're going to give you enough innings to have a chance every day. Which again, it just goes back to what I was saying. Like, that's not normal for the Orioles. As a fan, you have to go back to. I mean, the last one who was this dominant was probably Messina. But I don't know if you can go back to a time where before, like that run in the 70s and 80s, or 60s, 70s, and 80s, where the staff as a whole just would go out there and get it done. And this staff has a real chance to do that if they're all healthy. That's the biggest question mark. But all that to say, Grayson in the snow. I love Grayson. I really do. I've been high on him since day one. I know he's had his struggles, but Grayson's a Cy Young pitcher. He just is. It might take him a little while to get there. I think he's getting there now. But I think Grayson's one of those guys who, down the line, we're going to realize, like, man, he was an Oriole. That was pretty cool. So I hope people aren't sleeping on him because Burns is there. But I think this year specifically, him being able to slot in behind him is the best thing for him. If Grayson had to go out and be the guy, he's still learning. He's still young. I think people forget that just because he's been around the organization for so long. But him slotting in behind Burns, just having the chance to grow, develop, learn. I think this is the perfect situation for him, and so far it's worked out.
I do think though, with Grayson, I know last season he pitched, I think against Evaldi with the Rangers. It might have been Cole versus the Yankees, but he pitched against a lot of good talent, good pitchers when he came up. And he didn't always get the better stat line, but he was really close. And I also do think, I know they were talking about this on Masson. They had, what was it? Corbin Burns and Grayson just going back and forth, just funny banter back and forth about it. And I think that veteran presence by Burns, like bantering him and like him getting this competition, I think it really, really helps.
Yeah, Justin, I completely agree. I mean, having someone like Corbin Burns there, I mean, if you look at last year and where where we talk about the rotation now versus last year, like Kyle Bradish, we knew he was good, but we didn't look at him the way that we did at the end of the season. So like they didn't really have this established starting pitcher to sort of help these younger guys. And I think having a guy like Corbin Burns and having Grayson just be able to watch him and learn from him. Like Corbin Burns is a Cy Young pitcher, and right now, three starts in, he looks like the front runner this year. That's huge for a guy like Grayson. That's also huge for Dean Kramer, Tyler Wells. I know Cole Irvin's an older guy, but having a veteran elite starting pitcher that just I guarantee you that Grayson spent the entire offseason just learning what he could from Corbin Burns and watching him do things. And I feel like the expectations are not as high as well. He because of Corbin Burns and the star power that he is and the player that he is, Grayson's not expected to be the best pitcher. He's expected to go out there and be the 2 until Bradish comes back and then slide back into that 3. So, I mean, Justin, we talked about it before the season. What Grayson Rodriguez are we going to get? Are we going to get first half Grayson that struggled, or are we going to get the second half that looked like he deserved to be the number 2 in just about every starting rotation? And he has exceeded expectation through 2 starts, and I'm excited to see what he can do, because he could be an all-star pitcher this year. And Jason, as you said, like it wouldn't surprise me 3 years down the line if we're talking about Grayson Rodriguez as a Cy Young candidate, if not a Cy Young favorite.
I also do think, and a lot of people overlook him because he just hasn't done good this year, Tyler Wells, watch out for him. If you watched last season, before his arm injury, amazing. Like really, really, really good. He just needs to get back in that form. I think it'll take him a minute. But I really think people should not like overlook Tyler Wells, because that's another guy right there. And even if he doesn't make the starting 5, you put him in the bullpen, or you put Irvin in the bullpen, and they'll give you a solid 1, 2, 3 innings. So
yeah, that's I mean, when you look at, I know it's far away, but when you look at kind of playoff composition, that ALDS, you need 3. And then, as you move into the ALCS 5 and 7, and that really to me is one of the biggest advantages that the O's have looking at the playoffs, is that if they can get Bradish back healthy, if they can get Means back healthy, that 5 for the rest of the season is probably the best starting rotation 1 to 5 in baseball. It is complete. It is set, like that. Every one of them is a high quality pitcher. Now you move to a playoff series and you have Burns, Bradish, and Grayson 1, 2, 3. And then, in the playoffs, you're really just asked to get through 5. As a starting pitcher, if you can get through 5 in the playoffs and turn that over to the bullpen, you've done your job. But the bullpen, you got Tyler Wells sitting there if somebody struggles, Cole Irvin if somebody struggles, John Means if somebody struggles, let alone the rest of the bullpen. It's just the composition of this team. I mean, I can understand why O's fans are upset and in a way, maybe not upset's the right word, but frustrated that some of the players that maybe should be up aren't, or that moves aren't being made. But like when I look at this team, it's hard to, I used Kobe Mayo as an example today. I was, at work and we were talking, and it's like Kobe Mayo should be called up soon. He has looked great. Same with Heston. But the question is, where do you put them? And is it worth bringing them up to have 5 outfielders and then he's not playing every day? So I think that's the one thing is like the team is constructed so well you can't get rid of anybody because everyone is valuable and everyone has shown that they can be a starter for the O's.
I
Yeah,
do think
I
though.
mean,
Continue.
no, go ahead.
Okay, I
Because
do
I
think
have a thought that I'll follow off that.
Okay. With the outfield, right now it is Santander, Hayes, and Mullins. I do think that like out of those three, the one that might stay is Santander. I think you got Bradfield Jr., who is in Aberdeen right now. And then you have Cowser, you have Stowers. So I really think besides Santander, in 3-4 years, maybe 2-3 years, it depends how fast Bradfield comes up. They might be gone. And I mean, I know that's your three veterans that have been there the whole time, but they might be gone.
Yeah, and one thing, I don't know if you guys were able to catch Ryan Ripken's show when he had Jeff Passan on the other night. But Passan said he said the right thing the right way that I don't think anyone else has said yet, and it's that if these guys like the Mayos, the Kerstads, the Stowers, the Norbies, let's talk about him for a second. Connor Norby's also balling out. If those guys aren't here right now, but they're here to help you come playoff time, that's what matters.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's when you have to start making the hard decisions. It's not how do I mean, because obviously the Orioles are good enough to win enough games to get in the playoffs. And then how do you set yourself up best to win the lottery is essentially what he was saying. And that's exactly what it is. Come the playoffs, who are your 26 best players?
Mm-hmm.
Right now, you know, and there's a business side of it too, right? And that's exactly what as much as it sucks, as much as no one wants to talk about it, that baseball is a business, and if you can manipulate the system to work best for you, which I think the Orioles have done a great job of doing. Again, whether that's morally right or wrong, I'll let someone else decide that. But for the business side of it, they've done a great job of running the business well, and I think we're just going to see more of that this year. And I think when it comes time to shatter the window, you know, and get through it, the right guys will be there.
I think a lot of those guys will definitely benefit from expanded rosters come September.
Yep.
I mean, as you said, you know, that it's who's going to be your best guys, and they're off to hot starts now, but they're still young. You know, those are still young guys, and you don't want to rush them up. And you know, I know that a lot of O's fans are really excited about what they have in the minors and stuff. But you know, the team that is on the field right now is, I mean, give or take a few players, and honestly, those few players I don't think are elite difference makers. I mean, you know, Aaron Hicks last year, Tony Kemp this year. You know, the team last year won 101 games, 102 games, something like that. You know, that is an AL East champion team that's on the field right now. And then you still have, I mean, I don't know how far into the minor league season, but I think it's only been 2 weekends of it. I mean, we could be looking at one of the greatest AAA teams of all time in terms of offense. But yeah, the team that's on the field now is great. And like you said, the business side of it, they have done a beautiful job. Morally, is the manipulation of service time a positive thing? As you said, that's you know, for someone else to decide, but it's legal. And you know, that's at the end of the day, they've done a really good job of keeping their guys, and they've got 7-8 of them ready to go, and they got a couple more of them that, you know, give them some more time. I mean, we've just been focusing on you know, the hitters. We haven't even talked about some of like the pitchers that they have coming up. You know, Cade Povich. I'm a big Jacob Ambruster guy. And you know, they've got just talent all around, and they've done it internally. They haven't spent the money, and I seriously cannot, like, as a Yankees fan, I am terrified for the next 10 years when it comes to having to play the O's, because it is going to be just stars after stars. And, you know, but at the same time, let them grind it out, let them get those AAA at bats, let them get as high of a ceiling as they can, and let them bust through. And they certainly are. Guys are going to get hurt. I don't wish an injury on anybody. And, if everyone could stay healthy the whole year, that would be perfect. But obviously it's not a perfect world and guys are going to get injured. And, that's when we might see a guy step up and or maybe have some struggles. Who's to say that Kobe Mayo doesn't come up and tear it up? And, maybe the business decision is, hey, he's earned it. And, we got to send someone down, but they'll be up. And I mean, I can't say enough about what they've done on the business side of it, because being bottom 10 in payroll and having the future that they have, like, I can't imagine if they start shelling out big contracts, they will be a dynasty. I don't want to put too much hype onto it, but like what they are building in Baltimore, top to bottom, from Baltimore to Aberdeen, is just a world-class organization.
I do also think, and Jason, you can quote this if I don't say it exactly, but talking about the business side, I know you met David Rubenstein at spring training, and I know you said something along the lines to him of like, I love the O's or something, and he said like, I love the O's too or something, or he's like, I love your passion or whatever, and you were talking about like, oh, like he has the same passion. I think owners like that are amazing.
Yeah, no, his exact quote. I introduced myself because he's walking around. Not many people recognized him at the time. I just introduced myself, shook his hand, and told him I was, a season ticket holder up north, and he said, "Oh, you're a fan too." So he just cares. I mean, everything he's done so far, there's no reason to believe otherwise. Again, at the end of the day, it is a business, but when you have someone who is as invested as he seems like he's going to be, yeah, this team could get pretty scary pretty quick, which they already are. But you start throwing money behind it, there's no telling what they can do.
Mm-hmm. I also do think with the Pirates series, that play by Henderson wasn't the best when he overthrew to Mountcastle, and again, it was sad that like he put his head into his glove, but it shows that he cares. And I really like that. If you saw Machado, like I love Machado, don't get me wrong, but Machado's not one of those players that always cares if he does something wrong. And I really think with this lineup, they care about winning, and it really is cool that even if they make mistakes, you can see that they care.
I think the big thing for Gunnar was just, I think he thinks in his head. Now, whether or not he actually could have made that throw, I think is a only he knows that. But from what he said after the game and the way that he acted, I think that he just felt like he should have made that play. And credit to him, that dive to even get one out was a great play. I actually was, one of the points I want to bring up is I would love to have known, like, what was he thinking to sort of say, like, should he not have thrown it? If he doesn't throw that ball, it's first and third, it's a tie game, but there's 2 outs. So I think the biggest thing was just he feels like, he was in a position to make a play for his team, and it just didn't go that way. But that's going to happen, and it's going to happen, not just to him. It's going to happen to a lot of other guys on the team, and losses like this are going to happen, and that's just the way that baseball is. That's that's what happens when you play 162 games. That's the beautiful part about baseball, is that Gunnar made an error that, yes, costed them that game. In 2 weeks, we won't be sitting here talking about how that error mattered in the slightest.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the best part about baseball, is that you get to come out the next day and it's a brand new day, and you got 152 games in front of you. And I don't think that one error will slow him down in the slightest.
No, I was going to say that, for the 30 teams, probably 20 of them are losing that game because that ball's going up the middle anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And both runs score. So the fact that he got to it and said, I'm going to go for this. Again, I don't know how many shortstops do that anyway. So I think that's just a testament to like what this dude wants to bring every single day. And I've said this publicly so many ways, so many times. But for Gunnar specifically, I think not just this year, but I think he is a perennial MVP candidate moving forward. Unless something crazy happens or there's some major injury, I think Gunnar is going to be one of those guys that MLB puts on the posters, puts in the videos. Which again, I know the O's have a couple of those, but Gunnar is Jackson's going to be one of those too, honestly. And again, all three of the big three, right? Adley, Gunnar, and Jackson. You could close your eyes and pick one, and it's the same story. Um, but I think Gunner's the one worth talking about because he wasn't that 1-1, and I mean, they got him in the second round, granted, or the compensation round. Um, but Gunner he shows up, man. Every day he just shows up, and he doesn't care where he's playing, what he's doing. He's just going to go out there and do it.
I do also want to mention that game that the O's got walked off. Dean did throw 7 innings, only 1 run, 5 hits, no walks, 6 Ks. And really, the first part, once he missed that play, I wasn't mad about that. I was mad that people were gonna blame him and talk about that and not Dean Kramer's pitching because Dean had a hell of a game.
There was no talk about how good Dean Kramer was in that game, and it's sad. I mean, because that's always what happens. Any game that goes to extra innings, or really a lot of the time, any pitcher that gets a no decision is not the focus. But 7 innings in his second start of the year. I mean, if as an O's fan, like, could you ask for anything more than that line? I mean, that's if that's the line that you're getting out of Dean Kramer, I mean, that's more than what I think O's expected. I think, if that was 5 innings, you'd be like, all right, Dean Kramer had it today. 7, and his pitch count was pretty low too, because a lot of these guys are still on pitch counts. Like, you got to think about that. See, he got through 7 and probably was only on like an 85 pitch limit. There was not enough talk about him, and I mean, I put it below. He's through 2 starts. He's 11 strikeouts, a 2.19 ERA, and averaging 6 innings. I feel like, again, that's more than what fans asked for Dean Kramer. I know it's a small sample size, but I mean, if this is even half of, if this is the best version of Dean Kramer and you get 75% of that we're still sitting here talking about a guy who's going 5 innings, giving up 2 runs, and that's enough to keep a team in a game, especially a team like the O's. If starting pitchers for the O's can go out there and limit the other team to 2 runs, I don't see the O's losing many games with how good the back of the bullpen is, and honestly, how good the entire bullpen is. I know there's some question marks. I'd love to see a move at the deadline to just make it a little more locked. But then again, they're also missing their best bullpen piece, and they're missing their bullpen guy. I mean, Felix was the bullpen. I'm knowing that you can hand it down the line the way that they did. I mean, that's huge for a bullpen. I mean, I'm sure last year, with the way that things are, if I'm CNL Perez or Mike Bauman or any of those other guys, knowing that Cano's got the 8th and the way that he pitched and Batista's got the 9th, you're a lot more relaxed. But the bullpen, the bullpen's done a great job. They really have. The starters have done a good job, and Dean Kramer did not get enough love for the game that he had, because wow, wow.
Yeah. And I think too, just like I said, I believe Dean's going to be that guy this year. That's exactly what's going to happen, and I think he's okay with that. He's gonna go out and shove, and no one's going to talk about it. Because he's not a Burns or a Bradish or a Grayson. But it's funny because if you think about it, he was also he was the guy in the Manny trade, right? So in some way, shape, or form, I mean, well, you had Diaz, but him, I don't even know if he's playing baseball anymore. But out of the Manny trade, Dean's the guy left. So it is kind of cool to see you can trace things back to that far. Like, this is kind of when everything started. This is like there's still breadcrumbs of that, and that's a disservice to call Dean breadcrumbs of a trade from 2018. But yeah, it's just cool to see he's doing it at the major league level with the Orioles.
Something I do want to talk about, I guess, before we go to the Red Sox game. I know Spencer Strider got injured, and a lot of pitchers are not liking the pitch clock. For both of you, what do you guys think? Do you think they should keep the pitch clock? I mean, it works, but at the same time, this is how I thought of it. People are like, oh, like, do you like the pitch clock? I'm like, I'm fine with it. But at the end of the day, when I used to go to games, I would pay for a 3-hour game, and it would be worth my ticket instead of a 2-hour and 20-minute game. It's still worth the ticket, but I feel like the more time you spend there, it's worth more. But what do you guys think about the pitch clock?
I have two varying opinions. Justin, I completely agree with you. Like, as a diehard baseball fan, like, to me, the time limit was never the issue. You could sit me out there for 5 hours and I'd be happy. However, I think for the game as a whole, it was too long. So I do like the pitch clock in that aspect. I think for the game as a whole, it is good, but it definitely kind of sucks for people that are diehard fans and like just the traditionality of it. Going to the arm injuries and stuff, I don't think it's so much the arm injury, the pitch clock that is causing these injuries. I think it has a lot more to do with the way that pitchers are getting themselves ready now. Pedro Martinez was talking about it yesterday, I believe. He was talking about how when he was in the minor leagues, like, he never lifted heavy weights. He never did, super big weight training. Everything that he did was mobility, stretching his ligaments, like doing all these different plyometrics so that his body was just loose. Like, he wasn't out, he was never the strongest guy, never the biggest guy, but, one of the most dominant pitchers, if not the best pitcher of all time, And I think a lot of guys now are more into the, trying to put on weight and trying to put on muscle to throw harder. And not to mention that, humans have just evolved to, we have more guys throwing 100 miles per hour now than, when 20 years ago. And I think, our bodies were just not meant to throw things 100 miles an hour as many times as they are. And, over time, wear and tear. And, if you're putting on too much muscle and stressing your muscles out, at some point it's gonna tear. So I think it has a lot more to do with the fact that guys are throwing harder, and the harder you throw, the more stress on your arm, and the fact that just the training is different. I don't think the pitch clock is causing pitchers to have more or less stress on their arm.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to point back to this because it was one of the most insightful things I've heard about it. But again, with Passon on Ryan's show, he talked for more than a couple minutes about the progression of pitching from little league all the way to the majors. And that's exactly it. Guys get recognized the harder they throw. And that's just how it works nowadays. He said, like, Passon himself has a 16-year-old son who wants to throw harder so he can get recognized. That's just unfortunately been the name of the game. It's been how pitching is. The harder you throw and the higher the number on the gun, the more likely you are to make it. And the younger guys are doing that, yeah, the more likely they are to get hurt. If you got someone in high school throwing 90 and they're throwing 90, 95 in college, and then by the time they get to the majors, or albeit the years in the minors, and by the time they get to the majors, what's left of their elbow? So I know guys don't like the pitch clock. I don't know if you guys saw Burns post game talking about it, and he has every right to say that because he's the guy out there throwing the ball right there. You can't discredit him, but I think there has to be a solution where both things can be true. And again, I'm not the guy to figure out what that is. I'm not going to try to be, but something has to be done because, man, these elite pitchers seem to be dropping like flies, and that's the one thing you don't want. That's the worst possible outcome for baseball. So I don't have the answer, but something has to be done.
And hopefully, I mean, this is not just an MLB issue either. I mean,
Mhm.
there the Tommy John surgery as a whole was not something that was as big as it is right now. 15, 20 years ago. That was something that was very rare. You know, I know I know guys that when I was in high school 5 years ago were getting Tommy John as a junior because they had some minor injuries, and just cleaning it up and fixing it up will make them throw harder in the long run. So there are college guys, there are high school guys, everyone like Tommy John is just, and elbow injuries, it's becoming just too much. It's bad for the game. And I think hopefully that, maybe these big stars getting hurt will lead to, some changes and stuff, and hopefully that trickles down, because Jason, as you said, it's like it's velocity and it's spin rate. And it's how hard can you snap it, and how fast can you throw it. That's what matters. And there aren't guys like Kyle Hendricks just making it to the MLB every day. And the fact that he's still in the MLB, like, I've been a big Kyle Hendricks supporter just because he's not the typical starter. He's not throwing 90 plus miles an hour, and you don't need to. I mean, you really don't. Like, does throwing 103 miles an hour help you? Yes, but you don't need to throw as hard as like these guys are throwing to be a high caliber MLB pitcher. I mean, Kyle Hendricks led the league in ERA one year, throwing 85-mile-an-hour fuzzballs, and nobody could hit him all year. So I think it starts young. I think it starts at the little league level, and I mean, like, I was told as a kid, like, don't throw a curveball until you're out of little league.
Yep.
Now kids are throwing curveballs and change ups and all that at ages 8 and 9. Doing that every year, like, it's the body's not trained for that. And a lot of these, yes, high level high school, college MLB players are training their bodies, but there are non-MLB players that are just not training their bodies. And even these older guys, like, I'm sure that Spencer Strider wasn't in middle school doing plyometrics or looking at his arm the way that he does now. But that's 3-4 years of just wear and tear on a middle school boy who, it adds up, and it's overall, it's terrible for the game, and it sucks for those pitchers, but it's just bad for the game. You're losing guys that are not only just amazing people, but amazing baseball players. They draw revenue. Like, not having Spencer Strider is huge for the Braves. For the O's, Kyle Bradish being hurt, Garrett Cole being hurt for the Yankees. I'm sure I'm missing a couple other. Jacob deGrom last year, Verlander dealing with. Like, these are all guys that you want to go to the baseball stadium to see. They're guys that you want in the playoffs, and not having them is just terrible. And a lot of it is just there's something wrong with the way that the training's going. And I think, as Jason said, a lot of it comes from just being told to go out there and throw as hard as you can, or throw your curveball with the most spin. And to do that, it's snapping your elbow, and it's not a normal body function to be doing the way that they do. And people are not taking care of their bodies the right way, and which is crazy to think about, because if anybody's taking care of their bodies the right way, it's these guys, and they're still getting hurt. So clearly it's something more.
So I do think also with the Red Sox, I wanted to talk about this. Corbin Burns, and this is the second time he's done it. In the first inning, gave up a home run. And it got me thinking. Like, okay, when the playoffs come around, like, you can't really be doing that. I'm not really worried about it. But how does he keep that under control, in you guys' opinion?
I think the biggest thing is just, as you get more comfortable seeing a lineup the first time around, we talk about hitters being more comfortable, but I think pitchers get more comfortable as well. But at the end of the day, I think it just comes down to, the home run he gave up a couple weeks ago. He just hung a slider. It wasn't that it was a terrible pitch. It didn't get low enough and kind of stayed at the knees, and that happens. But I think the biggest thing is, looking past that, looking past the first inning, one hit. That I'll take that from any pitcher. Go give up 2 home runs in the first inning. If you have the game you do after, like, obviously it's not ideal, but again, as I've always said, as a starting pitcher, if you can give up less than 2 runs, you're putting your team in a position to win, and that's what he's done, and he's done it really, really well. I'm not super well-rounded in my O's history of elite starting pitchers, but I can't remember the last time the O's have had like a bona fide ace, a guy that what you're getting. I know that the last like real ace, I guess, before was maybe Chris Tillman, but even then, like, did you know what you were getting out of Chris Tillman every 5 days, and was it at the level? Probably not. So it's a good feeling as I call myself an O's supporter, but it's a good feeling knowing that, like, what you're getting out of Corbin Burnes. Is he going to get, is he going to have 1 or 2 rough starts? Yes. But if he stays healthy, you're going to get 30 starts. You're going to get somewhere around a 2.5 ERA. And, that's something the O's haven't had, as Jason said, since probably Messina.
No, I was going to say that to answer your question, it's Mike Messina in 2000. I mean, it's almost been 25 years since there's been a guy who it's a known quantity, day, time, weather, you get what you get. And again, not to knock anyone in between there. There were some other really good pitchers that came through. Some really dominant relievers that you could probably argue for, but as far as starting pitching, I think you have to go back to Messina in 2000. Which to give the point about Burnes, the home runs don't worry me at all. Every time he's given up a first inning homer, I'd tweet out that he gave up a homer to Mike Trout in the first. Like that just happens. These are Major League Baseball players. They're going to get you once in a while. If Corbin Burnes gives up 3 solo homers in the first inning, I still think he gives the O's a chance to win because he's going to lock it down. I mean, every time I've seen him give up a homer, you can just see a shift in his demeanor. Like, okay, I can't do that again. Whether he's trying, it's early season. It could, again, whether he could be trying something. I'll give him a pass all day long because he's Corbin Burnes. And he's proven me right so far that after those home runs, it just doesn't have even the walks. I think he's given up. It's 3 walks total. That number's probably wrong. But it's still single digit walks, which is bonkers. There's no, I can't remember the last time an Orioles starter did that. So it's special, and because of that, I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt as long as he needs it. I have no reason to believe otherwise.
Also with the Red Sox, Colin Cowser had a big day. 2 for 4, 4 RBIs. I mean, I love what I'm seeing from him. What do you think Hyde thinks? Basically with Cowser, I mean, because he has been starting Hayes a lot, but with Cowser showing like all he's been showing, when does Hyde start Cowser over Hayes? Like officially?
I'm probably the wrong guy to ask because if you follow me, it's there's a little bit of bias there because that's my guy. I think he needs to be starting. Over who? Again, I don't make the money to decide that, but I think if you give that guy a chance to see the ball every single day, he's gonna. I've compared him for a long time to Nick Markakis. Like he's just gonna go out there and he's gonna hit, but he's got to have the chance to do it. So again, I'm not necessarily saying he needs to start over Hayes or Tony or who. I don't know where he fits in. That's the crazy part. Is as much as he's my guy, I just don't know. But I think he just needs to be getting his at bats. Because so far he's proven he's proven it to be true, right? I mean, obviously he's had some strikeouts. But he's seen the ball really well, and his at bats just look completely different than they have in the past. So again, I'm probably the wrong guy to ask, but since you are asking me, I'm gonna tell you that Calvin needs to be playing every day.
I I agree. I think this is the perfect example of just a guy getting an opportunity with a struggling, fielder in front of him and just running with it. I don't I know Brandon Hyde is king of the platoons. I've never seen a manager kind of pinch hit the way he does and construct the lineup the way he does. But the scary part is that it doesn't matter which guys are in the lineup. That lineup is still very good. But I agree. I don't see how you know Kauser has pretty much done everything he has been asked to do and more in the time that he's been given. Like I don't see how you could say to him, "We're gonna go with Hayes." And I it sucks because I think right now Hayes is the odd one out. I mean, he's got 2 hits through 10 games, and both of those came in the first 2 games of the series. So hitless through 5, I guess, since he hasn't played the last 2 days. But he just you got to find a way to put him in the lineup. I think he's batting like 400, 4 RBIs yesterday.
Mhm.
Like at some point, if this continues, like he will force his way into the lineup, and that's what he's doing. And
Mhm.
honestly, I I like it. I think Colton was a guy that probably was going to be he was the fourth outfielder. He was going to get playing time
Mhm.
every so often, but just because of the 3 guys out there, wasn't going to get everyday playing. He's kind of forced himself into that conversation where it's like, at what point is Austin Hayes is struggling enough to say Kauser's playing every day? But I think he needs to be in every day. I don't see how you have a guy who's hitting 400 and 4 RBIs and really has been probably one of the top 3 or 4 bats on the team. He needs to be in the lineup every day, and I think if he continues it, he's going to force it. I think if he slows down a little bit, I think that's where Hyde might have a decision on his hand. But if he stays hot, that job should be his, and then we're looking at Hayes as the fourth guy. But they're looking at what he did last year versus this year, he's a completely different player, and he's shown that he can play at a high level and can be a very impactful player for the team.
Tonight, of course, we have Irvin versus Crawford. And to be honest, I really don't know why Irvin's pitching because it's supposed to be Grayson's day. Any reasons for that?
I don't.
Not.
Maybe it has something to do with the fact that I mean I'm just speculating here, but they did have an off day Tuesday, which I guess if you line up 5 days from Burns's last start, would have been that day. And I think if anybody is going to get, I think Burns is on, like, again, starting pitchers, especially elite ones, are weird in the sense that they have a lot of routines.
Mhm.
They might have just swapped him because Irvin could use the extra day of rest, and Burns is on a 5 day. Whenever his 5 day is up, that's when he goes. So that's the reason that I think it could be, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I was gonna say that they haven't said anything publicly, but I don't think there's anything else to it other than this is just what they're rolling with early in the season.
I also do think I know you guys were talking about it. I think the Kinks, and I mean, like, they haven't always been hitting. I mean, 10 games in the season, you can't really. I mean, that's a sample size. So I feel like Hyde's got to work those out. That's mainly a Hyde decision. But you can't really have everything be perfect the first 10 games in. And I mean, if you do look, and I want to think of the Rays as a good example. If you look last year, start off 13-0. They did slow down a little bit, but you can't always have everything perfect the whole season.
Yeah, well, don't tell Twitter that because they think you can. So
Yeah. Coming up versus the Brewers, DL Hall and Joey Ortiz return to Camden Yards. I don't know why. I'm expecting a DL Hall like dominant start. I really think we're gonna lose the first game of that series. I think DL Hall is gonna want to prove something. I just really think he's gonna do so good against us. I feel like that usually happens when we release a pitcher. It happened with Gosman a lot of times with the Blue Jays. They just come back and they dominate us. So as much as I'm looking forward to Friday, it might be scary to see DL Hall.
Yeah, he's looked. I mean, I know he hasn't been perfect, but I've watched 1.5 of his starts, and he looks good, man. I'm impressed with what he's done so far as a starter.
Mm-hmm. Let's see what else. Wells, Kramer, Burns, probable for the weekend. I think Burns is pitching that last matchup. It's a 3-game series, right?
Yep. Just Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
So it's gonna be Burns is that last game. If Burns is the last game, who pitches the first two?
Wells. It'll be Wells, then Kramer, then Burns. Because you got Irvin today. You'll probably see Grayson tomorrow, and then they're back. One of the things I'm really excited for this weekend, and this is something that, like, as you know, maybe not you yet, Justin, but big realization for me is that there are officially starting to be MLB players who are younger than me in the MLB, and two of those guys being Jackson Churio and Jackson Holiday. But that made me, as a 21-year-old, even feel a little old seeing MLB post today about the fact that Jackson Merrill, Jackson Holiday, and Jackson Churio were all born after 2003, which is just crazy because that those are guys younger than me. But seeing Jackson Churio, Jackson Holiday, like having these young guys, there are some young like just studs across the league, and I gotta say, this like series like this make me love the fact that the MLB switched the way that they do the schedule. There's still a part of me that is upset that we don't get 19 division games, because I think that's just, especially like come October, having a series in May with the Orioles and then that being like one of three, that's kind of lame. I'd like a couple in September too, but DL Hall's getting a return, like that's probably huge for him. I know Joey Ortiz didn't spend a ton of time up, but again, like still returning back to the organization. I mean, in terms of fan wise, I mean, Wells, Kramer, Burns, that's a pretty good pitchers to go see. And from everything that I've heard, Friday is going to be ridiculous because it'll be Jackson Holiday's home debut. Will say that I think this is actually, I don't know about funny, but just I think it's pretty interesting, and for me, I find it a little funny as a Yankees fan. But the game Friday night is actually on Apple TV, so a lot of people who have Masson are not going to be able to watch Jackson Holiday's home opener because and this was something that was planned before the season started. So, not Apple TV's fault, but as if Orioles fans already didn't have enough, issues with Masson and the way that they handle the O's games, not being able to see Jackson Holiday's home debut, I think is a little funny in the way that worked out.
Yeah, actually, I know. This is not a large number, but I've talked to a couple people who are going to the game because it's Jackson's debut, but they're going, or they said their lead reason for going was because it's an Apple TV game. And they would rather just pay $10 more and go see it in person.
Mm-hmm.
Along with what you said up front, yeah, once they kind of start, I think MLB will be milking and advertising the heck out of the Jackson matchup, just because that's the future. And when I saw that, I went right to Amazon and bought my Walker and tennis balls, because if you feel old, I was 10 when those guys were born. So I'm ancient at this point. So that I definitely felt that when I saw that today. But no, I think it's awesome that things like this happen. That it just happens to be these are the two young guys. They have the same name. I mean, again, I think MLB is going to just eat this up because it's perfect. It's what baseball needs. It just needs young stars who ball, and there's no better example than these two.
Yeah, and I think that especially with Jackson Holiday, and I think they do it. Maybe we don't see it as much just because out of market teams we don't really hear much about them in terms of like the way that they promote things and stuff. But like the MLB does a very, very, very good job at promoting like matchups. I mean, we look at they were it was spring training and they were milking Paul Skeens versus Jackson Holiday.
Yep.
That obviously like that is a crazy matchup and one that everybody wants to see. But they were posting about that and doing all types of things, and it was just spring training. I think that they are going to do that with every player that comes up that is young. I think that's the way that they are doing things now is they're going to highlight their stars and then build new ones. That's not that's what they kind of have done with like the Bobby Witts, the Julios, the Ronald Acuna's. Like they are stars in their own right, but they have just the media that they have had has just been pushed onto everyone, and like they're going to push Jackson. I'm not, when we see Kansas City, they're going to they're going to talk about Jackson Bobby Witt. When we see, that when they go to the Angels, it's going to be, they're going to talk, Mike Trout and Gunner, there's always a comparison that they're going to make. And that's what builds the game though. I mean, like that's matchups we want to see. Like, I know that they're not going to face each other, which that makes those matchups a little more, exciting, but these are two guys that very easily could be the face of the MLB in 10 years. I mean, they are 20 and 18, and the fact that they are that age is just ridiculous, and the fact that they are Major League Baseball players is ridiculous at that age, but just speaks to the level of hard work and talent that those guys have.
Yeah.
So talking about Holiday, I don't know if Jason just saw the update, but Rock Kabako put something out that said Jackson Holiday said he's excited, not nervous, and no caffeine so far. Left leg was bouncing the most of his 9.5-minute dugout interview, like a lot of 20-year-olds.
Yeah, I'm just reading that now.
I think the other thing that's like crazy, and this is a little more like outside of the baseball side of things, but I've watched a few of Jackson Holiday's interviews, and and again, he probably more than any player has had experience and has the most knowledge. I mean, his dad was 7-time All-Star. But the way that he holds himself and the way that he speaks and the way that, he talks to the media, like this isn't a 20-year-old kid. This is a 20-year-old adult. He is very mature in the way that he speaks. And yes, he's going to have those, like you said, Justin, those moments where, he's just jittery and that's I'm sure that's everybody, in a moment like that. But just the way that he carries himself and the way that he talks, like you would never believe that this guy is as young as he is, and he looks even younger than he is. But that he's done a great job in holding himself and not making himself look younger and look immature in any way. He's really held himself, which is crazy to think about that a 20-year-old is doing that.
I do also think it's part of his faith. I know he's like really into Christianity, and I think it's just part of that. And that's how he matures a lot. But yeah, something I did want to talk about. I mean, it's kind of baseball related, kind of not. I don't know if you guys saw this, but JJ Hardy was building a baseball field, and some woman was complaining, and there was a whole thing about it. And I just found it really funny. Jason, any intake on that?
It's hilarious because if you told me to pick any baseball player in the world that was going to be, they're not a problematic person, JJ Hardy would be at the top of that list. And it's just hilarious that a former big leaguer just trying to just trying to do something in his retired life that again I probably read too much because that's just how I am. Not doing anything illegal, not doing anything he can't do. He's got all the right stuff for it, and this lady's just upset because she's gonna see it. It it's hilarious, and again a lot of other players I would think it was funny, but the fact that it's JJ Hardy, like maybe one of the nicest people who has ever been in the game of baseball. And it's just hilarious that it's him and ridiculous,
Yeah,
truthfully.
and I, like you said, did everything right. Was not out of line in the way that he was going about it. Had everything he needed. I'm pretty sure he was going to use like use it for his obviously his family, but also like for the community and stuff.
Yep.
Just crazy to think that you know people have nothing better to do than to complain, because like you said, it's funny because all he's doing is just trying to enjoy his life and build a baseball field, and you know people have nothing better to do than to complain sometimes. And I what I would like to know actually is if that woman knew like who JJ Hardy was, because I think that would have been even more funny to know that he is a baseball player and still then make a big deal about it, or if she didn't know, like after the fact, like did she find out that I'm sure she did, but just overall a weird, interesting, funny situation.
Mm-hmm.
One thing, one
Okay.
thing I wanted to bring up, Kyle Bradish, a little update for him. He is scheduled to, I don't know if they have an exact date, but he's scheduled to head to high A to start some rehab starts, which is really promising considering it's April 10th. Now, I don't know how much time he's going to spend doing rehab starts because you really got to think, you know, this is the way. I mean, I only know this because this is the way they were talking about Garrett Cole is he didn't have a spring training. So, not only are you rehabbing his arm, but you need to get his body into pitching form. This is probably going to be, five starts, five rehab starts. And, I'm sure a few of them are going to be for length just to, get those pitches underneath his belt. And then you got to think when he comes up, even then he's probably going to be on a pitch count to start. So still a ways away from being the Kyle Bradish we saw last year. But I mean, considering that there was a big concern for whether or not he was even going to be available for the season, April 10th, having him head to start rehab starts is I think huge for those.
Something that we kind of covered a little bit, mainly for Jason, because I know you're on Twitter a lot. O's fans are ruthless on Twitter. Every time they lose, I don't know. I'm used to Yankees fans being like the ruthless ones. But again, I think it's because of that 115 loss season and just how bad the O's were in the past. What do you have to say about it?
It's funny because I deal with a lot of it, a lot, and it's one of those. It's everything you just said is true. As bad as the team was, I think everyone gets a little PTSD if there's a loss like there was against the Pirates or a walk off or if something goes wrong. But the way I always try to approach it is people feel this way because of how good the team actually is. When your expectations are sky high, anything lower than that 30,000-foot view is considered a failure to some people. Now, me personally, that's never the case. You're playing 162 games. You're the best team ever. I think lost what 40 some 50 something like that. And that was the best regular season team ever. You're not going to win every game. Certainly in the way baseball is played in 2024, you're not going to win every game. So I find some of it funny. I find some of it sad. I find some of it crazy. But I try to take it all in stride because the one thing all of it is passionate. Like people care, they really do. Um, and that's just how I try to look at it is no matter what I think about how someone feels, at the end of the day, that's their passion for the Orioles. Um, and so as like I said, I've seen some outlandish things, but it just means someone cares. And really, who am I to tell them that they can't do that?
And Justin, to your point, I mean, you talked about the Yankees and sort of the way that the fans are ruthless, and I think Jason, you pretty much explained exactly what Yankee fans are. I mean, like I said, so like for me, I've never in 21 years I've never experienced a losing season. I know for O's fans that probably sounds pretty cocky, and it is a little bit, but that's the expectation. The expectation every single year is this is a team that needs to win a World Series. So that's I think one of the biggest reasons that Yankee fans are so ruthless is just the fact that like anything less than a World Series is a failure for Yankee fans. And, looking at like the history and stuff, like, have not winning a World Series since '09, like for the Yankees, that's a long time. That is a really long time. So now they're even more, and I think, like you said, it's caring and it's loving the team. It's knowing what the team can do. And, O's fans know how good this team is. The team just won 100 games and they haven't even hit you know, they haven't even hit Gunner's full potential. They haven't hit Adley's full potential. Like these guys are still, Gunner was a rookie last year. 2 years ago, a couple years ago, Adley was a rookie. Like, but I think people see how good this team can be and, how good this team has already been and then how good the team could be. And it's like losing a game because of a bad throw, as we talked about, it's one game, it's a bad throw, it happens. But to a lot of people, it's that's a game we should have won, and that's a game that we should have taken, and that's when people start to get upset because it's like that's not a game we should have lost. I know how good Gunner can be. I know how good of a fielder he is. He should have made that play, and it's like it's not a perfect sport. This it's going to errors are a thing, losing's a thing, and I think fans are, but I think this is good for fans. I think being upset in a way is good. It shows that fans are involved. You know, fans care, fans are involved, they love the team. And I think, yes, it gets hard because, if things don't go right, fans are going to be upset. I mean, I couldn't imagine if the O's like missed the playoffs this season, how fans would react, even though it's like, okay, well, we still are a young team. We're, still no longer are they rebuilding, but they're still a very young team. So I think it's great. I think, I think the idea behind fans being upset is great. I'm sure some of the stuff they're saying is not always the best. And, as a Yankee fan, I can attest to that. I mean, the way that the Yankee fans treated Joey Gallo was atrocious. That really was like, I mean, that was tough to watch every day and see him play and just looking at it now, like he resents the time he spent with the Yankees because of how much he was hated. I don't think it will ever get that bad with the O's, but it's passion, it's love, and those same people that are on Twitter blowing up are the same people that are going to be in those seats when the O's make the playoffs, cheering them on. So it's all a balance.
I also want to talk about. I know Gibson had a terrible start last night. Flaherty did too. I have it right here. It was like 5 strikeouts, 1 walk, 9 hits. Like what does that say? 6 earned runs. It just shows that Elias knows what he's doing. As much as Flaherty wasn't good, like for us, I think he got the best out of Flaherty that he could get. And it just shows that Elias knows what he's doing, and I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I've been very vocal about trusting him for a long time now. Again, I know with Jackson not being on the opening day roster, or when Adley came up, or I'll go all the way back to the Jamai Jones stuff, if everyone remembers that. And, people have criticized him a lot, but man, has he gotten it right. And this is we're just starting to see the rewards of it. So I hope people start to give him credit more than they have criticized him, because the critics have been louder, honestly, in a lot of ways. But I think once this team starts holding trophies in October, what are you going to say at that point?
Right. Norfolk Tides, insane video game numbers. I mean, they put up 26 runs last Thursday. I don't remember the exact day. It was against the Chicago White Sox AAA team. Again, Kierstead, Mayo, Norby. You know who's not bad? Peyton Burdick. He's not terrible. Who else do you have? You have McKenna down there. I mean, I think a lot of O's fans remember that drop ball by McKenna, so like that affects them and the view of McKenna. But McKenna's not bad. Cade Povich, like you have so many good people down there that like, and if we were on here talking about this like on and on and on, we would not even know where to put these players. And I mean, I don't think O's fans, like, of course, we're not making decisions, but I don't think O's fans, not that I can remember in my lifetime, have ever had that decision where they're like, okay, like, well, where's this player going to go? Where's this player going to go?
Yeah, no, it's a problem that I don't think anyone's ever had to deal with in the best of ways. I think there have been great minor league teams with a lot of young talent. There have been a lot of great systems with guys at different levels. But the Orioles have probably the most unique problem in baseball history. As in just you have essentially two lineups worth of guys who could play every single night in the major leagues and be just fine. More than just fine. Again, it's a very unique problem to have because there are lineups scrambling every night to find nine. But again, it's another testament to what Michael Elias has done and how he's built this team. And again, I've said this before. I'm not the only one who said it, so I'm not going to, say I'm not going to take credit for this or anything. But the idea that people, it's when I talk about having your 26 best players, that matters in the playoffs. It really does. Mm-hmm. But you need all these guys want to play, whether that's in Baltimore or not. All these guys want to play, and I think eventually, something's going to have to give to where you find these guys spots again. Maybe not at Camden Yards, honestly, because you're going to need that pitcher or someone's going to get hurt where you need some depth somewhere. So I think it's just a testament to Michael Elias to where he can literally move the chess pieces wherever he wants. And there's no wrong answer. Again, if you ask Twitter, there is. But in reality, there's no wrong answer. You can bring up Norby and you can play him at second. And you can put Jackson at short and Gunner at third. Like there's no end in sight to what you can do with these chess pieces. And I cannot recall a situation like this in my 30 years of watching baseball.
Caleb, I bet you could. I bet you could.
I mean, as Jason said, like I've seen some. As a Yankees fan, like I've seen some very good lineups. I mean, my favorite lineup of all time is the 09 team. I mean, I love so many of those guys. Like that lineup, top to bottom, was great. But they never had the farm system sitting below that the O's have. And as you said, I mean, you said it perfectly, Jason. It is the best problem to have, because God forbid someone gets injured, you are going to be replacing them with an MLB caliber player, top to bottom. Mm-hmm. And I think we're still not at that point where decisions need to be made. I think we're at the point where things need to start just being talked about. You need to start talking about what you're going to do with Hayes, Mullins, and Santander, because those are the three guys who are, next up for contracts. But it's a great problem to have. I there's no downside to it. That it's at the end of the day, like the O's have two paths that they can kind of take once they decide that they need to make a decision, and that's trade the farm and just who knows what they could get for the prospects they have down there. I mean, they traded DL Hall and Joey Ortiz and got Corbin Burns. To most organizations, that would be a big hit to your farm system. Wasn't even the O's. I don't know. I forget where Joey Ortiz was ranked. I think he was number 6 at the time, but didn't even get a top 5 prospect from the O's perspective. So, if that's the way they decide to go, I think that they'll be just fine. Or they could, kind of just keep doing what they're doing and, let the older guys move on and fill the gaps. And I think they'll be fine too. But it's the best problem to have. And as you said, Jason, it's a testament to Mike Elias. I don't think that he gets as much credit as he deserves, even though I do think that he does get a lot of credit. I think that, when you really look at his tenure with the Orioles, like I know that maybe, outside of last year, the MLB success hasn't been there, but he has completely turned around the farm system, the team, and now we're looking at the team and saying that like pieces put together, like the pieces are there, put it together. This could be a 10-year, we're talking 5 years on the short end, but this could be a 6, 7, 8-year stretch where this team is just the best team in the league. That like the only team right now that I could see being as dominant for the next few years is the Braves, because they locked everybody up. They don't have a lot of farm guys, but Acuna, Albies, like they tied up all their guys for the next 7, 8 years. But it's crazy. I mean, I think it's already been said a million times, but they have the best farm system, and I think a lot of that comes because they have the best farm system. I don't know, staff. I think their coaching staff in AAA, AA, single A is just top notch. I mean, you look at these guys like and how they performed. It doesn't end, the production, and they still got guys like Enrique Bradfield. I think he's the next center fielder. I think I'm very, very high on him. But he's in single A. I don't see why he couldn't be in AAA by the end of the year, especially with the way that the O's push guys through the system when they're hot. So it's a great problem to have, and it's a problem that I think 29 out of I think all 30 out of 30, unless you're maybe the Dodgers, you want these problems. So it's just great job by the organization on the the analytical side of it and on the the building block side of it.
Before we go into the closing, I want to ask Jason this question. So huge Creed Willems fan. I've had him on the podcast, met him in person. He's an amazing guy, amazing catcher. I really do think though, once McCann leaves, you got to bring him up. And you may be like, why not Basayo? I think you let Basayo take his time. And I think Creed is just that other catcher that you can use. He's an amazing catcher behind the plate. He can slam that ball. And I think that will really help too when Creed comes up. What do you think about that?
Well, one, I saw his home run last night because I was watching the Ironbirds, and that ball it seemed like it just wasn't going to come down. So he crushed that. But I hate to tell you, I actually disagree. And the reason is not necessarily McCann, but I think one of the things that in the formula we've seen championship teams win with, it's that their backup catcher is a veteran who's happy catching every 5th or 6th day. And he's the guy who he can help develop a young staff. And that's why, honestly, I think I've said this about a lot of guys, but man, James McCann needs more credit. Because I think he's even helped, as good as Adley is, I think he's helped him have his mindset towards what he needs to be for the next 10 years as a catcher. I think he's been there, he's done that. And again, I know he was never elite. I know he was never the guy. But man, when James McCann was good, he was good. And he played with some really good guys, and he had some really great pitching staffs he worked with. Um, so I think you can't sleep on what I don't know who that next one is. I know Chirinos wasn't he was fine, but he wasn't necessarily that guy who had sure he had playoff experience, but um he just wasn't doing it at an elite level for a long time. But I think you need someone, especially behind someone like Adley. And again, I love Creed. I love him to death. I think one day he could be a starting catcher in Major League Baseball. But I really think the formula is a veteran presence who can just be that guy who takes his at bats, gets the hits, pinch hits when you need him, but he's also there to catch when your guy needs a day off. And to do that takes a lot more mental strength than I think people realize. Because you have to know the pitching staff just as well, if not better, than the guy. Because your guy, like for Adley, he's doing it every day. He's working with these guys every day. And McCann is too, but McCann is not physically squatted behind the plate, but once every, again, 4, 5, 6 days. And the mental fortitude it takes to just hop in there and say, all right, it's my turn today. Here's the pitchers I'm working with. Here's what we're doing. Here's how many innings are going. Oh, here's this reliever coming in. McCann may not work with the reliever for 2 weeks because of just how things line up. So I think having a veteran like him back there is not just crucial but vital to a championship formula.
With that, let's get into the closing. I think this is the longest podcast I've ever had. It is awesome though, because we had a lot to talk about. But hey, Birdland, how are we doing? This week we had Jason on the podcast, talked a lot of ball. I want to thank you for coming on. I know Caleb does, so I'll let Caleb take it from here.
Yeah, Jason, thank you for coming on. Just let everybody know where we can find you and where we can, read up on your work. Cause the first time I've met you and the ball knowledge you have is definitely pretty elite. So, guys should definitely go check out his work. Where can we find you?
Yeah. Well, first, thanks for that. Thanks for having me on. This has been super fun. Again, this year I'm just trying to talk with people because I've been doing it by myself for a long time. So stuff like this is awesome. But so you can I'll be writing with the Baltimore Battery, which again you can find thebaltimorebattery.com, the Be More Battery on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it now. And then I'm also going to be doing stuff with, I've already started, but I'll be popping in and out of the Ryan Ripken show here and there. I'll be doing that. I don't know if I might be on at some point this week or next. So just I'll be announcing those things on Twitter, X, and there I'm just J Benowitz 1831. You can find me during the game. I'm probably going to be in all caps, so I apologize in advance. And otherwise, I'm just again I love ball, love the O's. I give stuff away. Again, I don't know exactly when this will be coming out, but I'll just tell you guys here first. I'm giving away a pair of tickets to Jackson's debut on Friday. I got them right before I came on. So I'll be giving a pair of those away on X. And it's just, again, love of the game, love of the sport, love of the team. All I try to do every single day is just invoke the joy those and baseball give me and other people. And that's all it's ever going to be.
Again, also, anytime you want to come on, feel free. And yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, guys. This has been fun.
I'll talk to you soon.